show you very quickly the service thinking framework that Jeff referred to in action, in real-time action, because it's something that we're currently developing to solve a specific experience gap. And it's the one that several panelists have referred to, the experience gap between industry and higher education. And there was a very dramatic picturing of that in the Wall Street Journal in January. A couple of numbers jumped out of a Gallup report. One is 96%. That was chief academic officers at major institutions of higher education answering the question in the top two boxes. I'm extremely or somewhat confident in my institution's ability to prepare students for workforce success. Well, we've just been talking about that today, right? And we think that that may be not the case. Well, what does industry think? And number was 11. Business leaders who strongly agree, so it's top box versus top two box maybe, and that may be a data problem, but that today's graduates have the skills and competencies their businesses need. So here's a gap in service thinking, an experiential gap, where the experience is the business leaders, here's the experience I'm having, and the chief academic officers don't get it. They absolutely don't get it. So there's some massive gap there. So service thinking, everything we've been talking about today is about bridging those gaps. And in honor of the T Summit tomorrow, I put this in the language of the T approach. In service thinking, we have assessment tools, which is the horizontal of our T, the subjective, empathetic part of it, which is understanding that the output of a service is a customer experience. We've talked about that. The 11% is the current customer experience. That you've got to co-create value between the two parties before you've got any kind of value creation. And as the service science discipline talks about, you've got to do that in the context of a service system. It's never, as Jim Sporer always taught me, it's never a person serving a person, it's always a service system serving a service system. And so you've got to fit into the existing service system. So if we apply that assessment tool to our gap, deeply understanding the customer experience. Well, obviously you've got to dig into a lot of data. There was more data in that survey. 88% of the business leaders said, I'd like to have more collaboration with the schools. There's one way of bridging the gap to help improve the mismatch that we've just seen. And I don't know whether Tony Papanfuso was here, but he was saying the same thing. You've got to figure out how to bridge that gap. And you could delve more into the customer experience. I love the idea of engineering that process gap as we talked about earlier. Fitting in and contributing to the existing service system. Because we're business people, not academics, we took the terminology of viable systems approach, constant resonance, and called it fitting in and contributing. So you've got to fit into the existing system. We're not talking about blowing it up and starting again. You've got to fit in somehow, and it's got to contribute. It's got to create new value. So the concept that we're working on with the help of many, many people, and we love your ideas, is the mentored service technology projects for students and maybe for executives. We've got to retrain executives. So in there you've got mentoring, you've got, in this case, people from industry maybe mentoring students. You've got services and service technology, as Professor Rosinski was talking about, and you could do that with students and executives. And you could co-create it. So our elements of co-creation that we've worked on so far are the service thinking principles, our 7 principles as Jeff talked about, but you could take any of the literature. We've just synthesized years and years and years and years of service science literature. And you could teach principles, you could teach competency. And working with ISSIP, ISSIP has a certification committee that Jeff and I and others stand on. And we could take some of this testing and say, at some point, it's good enough to certify people, certify students or executives in these new competencies of service thinking, or service engineering, or service delivery. You could certify people so they say, hey, I've got at least some basic competency here. Then you take a mentoring platform, and there are plenty of platforms that we could build on. We've looked at IBM Connections, which is one of their social platforms. Lisa Tenoria came up with a great idea of running it on Salesforce.com, which she would, of course, but it's an entire possibility. You could build a platform whereby people can talk to each other through video, they can exchange memos, they can do delayed time conversations, they can put up projects, they can check milestones, you can share knowledge, etc., etc., etc. The platform is not conceptually hard to build. And then you run a project on it, where the students, having got the certification, come in, do a project with industry. You're mentored, so the mentor is coaching you along. The mentor may even be grading you in some fashion, not just on competency, but on skills, applying the competencies, and on attitude, which is how good at you are working in teams, how good at you at critical thinking, how good at you at design thinking, and so on. So the idea of the mentored service technology project platform. The stem of the T is how you deliver that, and I'll just mention two of them. We call it GLOMO, global, mobile, and social. So you could build a platform on one of those, or on all of those elements, global, mobile, and social. And the other thing Lisa said at lunchtime was, well, let's get 1 million students doing this. Well, that's the kind of thing you could do on one of these platforms. So let's design it for the kind of scale that we want it to have. And I'll just go down to the bottom. The other interesting element of delivery is, what do you measure for success? Can you measure empathy? Can you measure the emotional skills that you have to participate in these projects? And so let's figure out the metrics of that. And so students could get graded on their competencies, their skills, and their attitudes. And one of the things the mentors could do is provide that kind of grading. So this is a work in progress. I just wanted to show you the idea of the mentored services technology project platform. That's what we call it. Somebody will come up with a nifty name. And how we can use the principles of service thinking. So if any of you have any ideas, things to add, thoughts, tell Jeff and myself, because we'd love to hear what we're building now. Thank you.